Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 6th of July. Today we have a lot of interesting updates, so let's start. First we will discuss some projections. Today I got a few projections about the things that maybe are going to happen in Ukraine on our front lines. And there is a projection from the British intelligence and the second projection is from the US intelligence. And if we are talking about the British intelligence, they are saying that the next major direction, the Russians' major direction, is Sloviansk. And according to the British intelligence, the Russians are planning to attack Sloviansk from the north, from this area. They say their projection is based on the fact that after the Russians established control over Lysychansk and managed to short the front line, according to their intelligence, they moved almost all their forces towards, not like all forces, they moved a lot of forces from Lysychansk, from this area, towards Sloviansk. If you remember, we discussed the situation a few videos ago that as soon as the front line becomes shorter, the Russians, according to the standards, are able to move some forces to another front lines. So maybe the British intelligence thought exactly the thing that we were talking about. So they spotted that the Russians moved a lot of forces from Lysychansk agglomeration towards Izum bridgehead. But another important thing we need to discuss and to talk in this situation is that Putin said that he wants some forces to relax and regroup. So maybe the forces that were spotted by the British intelligence is exactly the forces that should have some rest, should some regroup, reinforce before the beginning of the next phase of operation. So let's repeat one more time. The British intelligence are saying that the Russians are moving towards Sloviansk from this bridgehead using the road MO3. Of course, this might happen. Of course, this projection can be true. There is not just the only one way to attack Sloviansk using the road MO3. We know that the Russians have some bridgehead on this side of Siversk River. This map is not updated and the Russians control this small bridgehead like between Tatyanovka and Prishep and Sidorova. So of course they have some progress in this area and the Russians are able to attack Sloviansk using this road, and of course the next stop is Mayaki. And this might work out, but the problem is, it's my opinion, of course, I'll give you my opinion. The problem of this projection is that anyway, if the Russians are planning to attack Sloviansk using this road, they will have to storm town in front. And according to this projection, I don't see how the Russians, maybe the British intelligence nowadays, how the Russians are planning to cut supply roads from Kramatorsk towards Sloviansk, this one and this one. And of course the road that leads from Bakhmut towards Sloviansk. So we see that according to these projections, the Russians will have to attack the fortress, which will have very nice supply from the rest of Ukraine. Of course, we can say that using this projection, using this attack, the Russians are able to cut the supply from Barvenko towards Sloviansk, but they are not able to cut the supplies from Kramatorsk. So that means that it will be very bloody, very long battle. Furthermore, if the Russians want to attack Sloviansk using this road, first they need to solve the issue with the Sherwood Forest, as the Russian calls the area between these two lines, between Sidorova and Hristische. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, this is the forest I'm talking about. It's a very big forest, there are a lot of Ukrainians, there are a lot of mines, a lot of traps, so I don't think that the Russians are able to cross this forest like in a week or maybe in a two. They will have to spend a lot of time just to clear this forest from the Ukrainians. They will do this, of course, they won't be able to avoid this operation. Do they can to pass the forest without entering there? Yes, they can, but of course, it would be this operation would be much more successful if the Russians are able to establish some communication between the front lines. For example, between Hristische and Mayaki. So if they are able to establish some communication, regrouping, reinforcement each other, and help each other, of course it will be much more better, but for this case they need to cross the forest. So this is the projection from British intelligence. If we're talking about the US intelligence, they're saying that the major direction of the Russian offensive operation in the upcoming weeks are going to be direction towards Siversk and direction towards Bakhmut. So as you can see, it's totally different directions, and about this direction we also understand. If we're talking about Siversk, we understand that this line is very fortified. There are a lot of Ukrainian forces there. We discussed the meaning and the value of Siversk and what happens if Siversk falls, about this valley, about this MO3 road, about these small towns. So from this perspective, I think that the US intelligence is more accurate than the British one, because at least in this case I don't see any storming of any fortress. Of course, if we're talking about the Bakhmut, by saying that the Russians' next goal is direction towards Bakhmut, and by these words the US intelligence means that the Russians are planning to storm Bakhmut in front, it's also not very good idea, because anyway I understand that the Russians changed their tactic, and I'm not sure that till the end of this campaign we are going to see the same stories as we saw in Mariupol, like storming of towns, like with big losses and so on. Furthermore, I see that Bakhmut, the situation with Bakhmut is the same as with Sloviansk. If we are talking about storming Bakhmut and developing offensive operations towards Bakhmut without encircling this town, I see the same picture with big losses, with town which will be supported and supplied from Chasov Yar, from Kramatorsk, from all these back. This town will be supported if the Russians, according to the US intelligence, are going to storm this town in front or to develop their offensive operation in direction of Bakhmut. If we talk direction of Siversk, we understand that the main idea is attack Sporny, Ivano-Darnivka, Vyimka, to cut the roads, try to cross the river, try to encircle, try to push Ukraine from this area, and to reduce the Ukrainian forces as much as possible while retreating. Of course, we understand the meaning of direction towards Siversk. About direction towards Bakhmut, to tell the truth, I don't understand exactly what does the US intelligence means. Do they mean like to attack towards Solidar or to encircle it? If we're talking about attack towards Solidar, yes, we can say direction towards Bakhmut, but I don't think that, for example, direction towards Kudyumovka, like a direction towards Ugldarska power plant, is the same direction as to say towards Bakhmut. I don't think so. If we will compare these projections, and if we will compare the previous projections of these two intelligence, I must say that there was projection of both these intelligence about Lysychansk. For example, the British intelligence said that the Russians are planning to storm Lysychansk from Severodonetsk. And as you see, as we understand, these projections wasn't very accurate, because the Russians stormed Lysychansk and took entire Lysychansk agglomeration from the south, we can say from the area of Kamyshovaha towards Toshkovka. From this place, the Russians were attacking Lysychansk, and they forced Ukrainians to retreat from this area. And to tell the truth, it was the option of the US intelligence. So the British intelligence told us that the Russians will try to storm Lysychansk from Severodonetsk, and the US intelligence told us that the Russians will do this from the south. If you remember my projection about Lysychansk agglomeration, I agree that the operation about encirclement and offensive operation towards Lysychansk should start, and it started from the south, from the area from Vrubivka, Gorska, Zolotoy, Toshkovka, and I had another small projection about this operation, that the Russians would try to cross area near Privilye, and just to speed up this operation, to do this much more faster, because exactly, if you remember, as soon as the Russians crossed the river near Privilye and established control over this small town, like a few days later, this entire agglomeration fell. Of course, there was a lot of problems as soon as Gorsko-Zolotoy cauldron fell, but as soon as Privilye fell, everything became more faster and more unpredictable than we could expect. And if we're talking about my projection about the next steps in this area, I agree, like we can say like 50% with the US intelligence, but if we are talking about the direction of Siversk, yes, I agree that the Russians are planning to storm Siversk to take control over these towns, like the main goal, but I'm not agree about the Bakhmut direction. I think that the second direction, the Russians' second direction in this area would be the New York agglomeration, and the Russians will try to attack New York agglomeration from the east, from this from, we can say it, Ugldarska power plant, from this direction, and so on. I tried to analyze, to understand these three projections, the British intelligence, the US intelligence, and as I understand, if we're talking about the British projection, as I see they're building their projection on the basis of the territory expansion. So they like by attacking Sloviansk, they base their projection. Like the Russians, the main goal for the Russians is to take control over as much territories as possible, because if you are taking Sloviansk, if you are able to take Sloviansk, we can say that this entire area might collapse, because it will be very much more difficult to protect land territory from Kramatorsk towards Toretsk. So all this territory will be like in a very big danger. This area will be cut off from railroad support and so on. If we're talking about the US projection, as I see, they're building their projection on the base of demilitarization, not the territory expansion. We know that there are a lot of forces in the area between Siversk and Bakhmut, and to tell the truth, it's much more difficult to hold this area in comparison with the situation in Sloviansk, because it's a fortress, it's a town, there is a rock Karachun. This one, there is a rock Karachun, and it's like 168 meters above the level of the sea, so it's like high position, and this high position is like not like in front of attack, but like back of the town. So the Ukrainians are using this rock Karachun for spotting enemy, for controlling the territory around the town, because you can't rely just on drones, because at least the simplest situation with drones, their battery might go off, they may turn off, and that's it. So that's why, of course, you need to have 24 hours control from some highland, and so that's why to take Sloviansk at least in front is not very good situation. If the Russians had some control over this area, right over this area, and if the Russians were somewhere here, and if they developed their attack from this side towards Rock Karachun, to tell the truth, I would agree with the British intelligence, because in this case they have much more chances to take a control over Sloviansk, but not from using the MO3 road and direction from Kristische Sloviansk, Mayaki Sloviansk. And if we're talking about the US intelligence, as I understand, they base their projection on the demilitarization factor, because there are a lot of forces in Siversk, a lot of forces in Bakhmut. All these two towns is in the lowland, and the Russians are shelling this area, trying to reduce the Ukrainians as much as possible. If we're talking about my projection, I built my projection on the basis of saving lives, on the basis of saving the Russian soldiers, on the basis of pushing Ukrainians from the civilian part, because as you see, Gorlovka, there is Gorlovka, Donetsk, Makeivka, all these towns is full of civilians. They are living there, and there are Russian soldiers there. So of course, as I see, we know that the Ukrainians are shelling Donetsk heavily. Today we got another report from Makeivka that according to another shelling, according to another shelling of this area, another child was killed during this shelling. So I see that at least by this attack in direction from Ugldarska power plant towards New York agglomeration, the Russians are able to at least to create some buffer zone, some territory where civilians are able to live and not being shelled by the Ukrainian forces. And it's like the request of the time. It's not like the request of this special operation, it's a request of time. So the Russians need to show the people in this area that they're trying to not just to demilitarization process, like destroying the Ukrainian army everywhere in Donbas arc operation, but not near Donetsk. And now let's talk about the facts. So 3 projections, 3 interesting directions like Sloviansk, Siversk, and Bakhmut or New York agglomeration. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, yesterday we discussed that the Russians took small town Mazanovka, this one. So, and according to the British intelligence, the Russians is around in 16 kilometers from Sloviansk. So let's calculate the distance, and the distance of 16 kilometers is somewhere here. So exactly right. So we can say that Dolina and Krasnopolye is already in the back, the Russians' back. So they have already crossed this area, and the Russians, according to the British intelligence, is already somewhere here. So they took this territory, which also confirms that Dolina is under the Russian control. Furthermore, there was a lot of reports from the Russian side that this town is already under the Russians, and this town is under the Russians for a very long time, maybe a few weeks in a row, and so on. So we can say that it might be some evidence that the Russians are trying, or maybe are going to use this road to attack Sloviansk. Next, another projection, another facts about Siversk, about this area. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, there is one important update. As we discussed, the Russians took control over Spornaya. I told you many times about the main direction in this attack, offensive operation. I will just mark this one more time for better understanding. Sporna, Ivano-Darivka, Vyimka, and after Vyimka to establish fire control over Zvanivka. And by this morning, the Russians took control over Spornaya. So this area that marked with the blue color is already under the Russians, and they're very close to Vyimka. They're just 11 kilometers. Even less, if we take, it's like 11 kilometers from the very beginning. Let's calculate just from Spornaya. It's just 5 kilometers. So I think that maybe even by the next evening, for Thursday evening, we're gonna see, or we're gonna have a report that at least Ivano-Darivka will be taken by the Russians. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, there's just one barrier in front of Russian, this trenched area between Ivano-Darivka and Vyimka. So that's mean that the Russians are able and do have possibility to at least take Ivano-Darivka by the next evening, and with help of this they will be able to establish at least some fire control over this territory. As I see, there is less and less time for the Russians to do something with Siversk by Thursday, but anyway, they did their first step. They took Spornaya. It was a very fortified area. If you take a look at this map, there is like trenches all along this town. There is small base, and all this territory is entrenched as well. Today I saw video from this area how the Russians were saying that they took this town. They told a story how there was fighting in these trenches and so on. Nothing special, just the understanding of what's going on there, what did happen there during the day. So we see that by taking Spornaya and moving further, we understand that anyway the Russians are going to take Siversk, or to block Siversk, to encircle Siversk in the next phase. So I understand that at least there are going to be some kind of, let's say, cooperation, or the Russians will try to unite Siversk with one of other district. For example, maybe, and if we're talking about operation towards Sloviansk and Siversk, so the British intelligence told just about Sloviansk, but if they told about Sloviansk and Siversk as one operation, I must say that this is really possible, because if Siversk falls, we see that in this case Sloviansk will be blocked from two sides. If Siversk falls, the Russians are able to move further towards Nikolaevka, and we can say that yes, Sloviansk is at least in operational encirclement. Almost every single road to this town will be cut off, and yes, the operation in Sloviansk might start. But they told us just about Sloviansk. So we see that because of Spornaya was taken, the Russians are trying to encircle Siversk. The only question from my side is about Bakhmut. So this town, and this is the only difference between my projection from the US intelligence. They are saying that the Russians will move in direction towards Bakhmut. I'm saying that they will move a little bit to the south in direction of Toretsk and New York. Now let's talk about facts. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, we're going to see the first fact in this situation is that the Russians established control all over Klinovo, this town, and they're right in front of Bakhmut. Let's update this map just for better understanding, and we see that the Russians already here. Furthermore, the Russians have very heavy clashes around town Pokrovsk. So they're trying to establish control as they did with Klinovo, and they're trying to push Ukraine. So maybe in a day or in a few, we're going to see that Pokrovsk is also going to fall, and the Russians will establish control over this town as well. So if we are talking about these facts, yes, we can say that from this point of view, the US intelligence is totally correct, because the Russians are moving step by step towards Bakhmut. But if we're talking about this direction, I see that it's like trying to project the offensive operation in front of Bakhmut. And like the Russians after Klinovo and Pokrovsk will try to attack this town in front, or maybe from Pokrovsk they will move towards Solidar, but Solidar is very difficult to take, because at least from this side, because you see this town is very long and it's like fortified every single street. So by taking like small part, you will have to move step by step, trying to reduce all the fortification. It's very difficult to take Bakhmut from this direction, is very difficult, but it's much more easier to take Solidar from this direction. So this is the reason that why the Russians are moving towards Sporny, Ivanodarivka, Vyimka. And also using these directions, the Russians will be able to solve a big problem with Berestovo, Bilogorovka, Yakovlivka, with these two towns that is under the Ukrainians, that located on the X road of life that connects Solidar with the Lysychansk. They will be able to encircle and to attack this fortified position from the back. So we understand that many things are saying that Siversk is 100% operation for the next phase, because it's very important. It's the key region that opens doors for the Russians to Sloviansk, to Solidar, to this situation on the road of life, to Bakhmut, to this valley. From this valley they're able to attack Chasov Yar and to encircle Bakhmut. So we discussed the Bakhmut and the US projection. But now let's discuss the situation in the south, about my projection that the Russians will try to move on the south of this area. Another fact about situation is that according to Ukrainian military authorities, they told us that they lost Novolugansk. This update came from Aristovich. I don't know if you're familiar with this person. He's Ukrainian, we can say, propagandist. And I'm not sure for 100% that this information is correct, because we haven't received any confirmation from any other source that this town was taken by the Russians. But if the Ukrainians are saying that, so why not to believe? But we, of course, will follow and we'll see the situation. So as you can see, the Russians are, let's mark this territory according to the Ukrainian information. Furthermore, Dolomitna, according to the Russian sources, is already under the Russians. So we can say that this configuration on this front line looks as follows. This one. So you see that there is already a small cauldron. If we're talking about a Bakhmut offensive operation, if we're talking about Siversk offensive operation, Sloviansk offensive operation, all this operation is in front. They're just like trying to develop their position. But if we are talking about operation in the south, there is already a cauldron. There is already a real possibility to encircle Ukrainian forces in Ugledarskaya power plant, Semigoria. And I'm not saying that there are like 15,000 soldiers, like the famous Ukrainian number of soldiers on every single front line. There are maybe 500 soldiers, I don't know. Anyway, but this is a real opportunity to reduce the Ukrainians and to take another territory, and furthermore to clear and to return this very important industrial social object, the power plant. So of course it's like for the civilian part, for people who lives in DPR, LPR, it's a very important area. It's like DPR republic, so it's for them it's very important. Furthermore, as you can see, if the Russians did establish control over Novolugansk, we see that there is already operational encirclement at least of two towns. Ugledarskaya power plant, because this town is already on the crossfire. Semigorye is already on the crossfire. And more sources are saying that the Russians are aiming towards Kadema. If we take a look, you see at this map, we see that there are some, we can say, shelling. Vershina, Zaitsev, we discussed, is already reduced to ruins. Travneva, Novolugansk, this territory is bombing heavily by the Russians. The Russians are trying to fix the Ukrainians, to reduce them, and to move further. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, we're gonna see the same picture. There is shelling, at least in Kadema. There was like a video on the Russian segment of internet, like of attacking of some equipment in this area. But why do I think that attacking towards Kadema is the best solution? First of all, if you take a look at Bakhmut, it's a big town. If you take a look at Sloviansk, it's a big town, fortified town with support and supply. And if we're talking about this area, we see that these villages are not so huge or not so big, and it will be much more easier for the Russians to crack this nut. Because as soon as they're able to take Kadema, they will be able to move further to the west towards Kudrymovka. And from this Kudrymovka, from the south, like trying to go to the south, like trying to pass Bakhmut from the south, from this Kudrymovka, the Russians are able to develop their offensive operation in three directions: towards Chasovy Yar, towards Taretsk, and towards Konstantinovka. And if we're talking about New York agglomeration and Taretsk, we see that the Russians have already some progress on the south of New York. And New York, as you see, is also under shelling. And from this side, the Russians are able to move to the north towards Sukhaya Balka, and they can develop their progress to the north. And with this, as you can see, we also might see some cauldron, because they're going to be encirclement also from two sides. The first one from the west, from the east, from direction of Ugledarskaya power plant, and the second one from the south, from Verkhny Taretsk towards New York. So I think that, of course, if an army has possibility to encircle something, of course they should encircle something. And furthermore, if we're talking about control over town Kudrymovka, it opens a wide front line. For example, the Russians need to keep their forces just in Kudrymovka, in this town. And for the Ukrainians, in this case, they need to keep forces in Taretsk, Konstantinovka, Chasovy Yar, Bakhmut, all around this town, to keep some forces just for one reason: to be on the safe side. If the Russians, they can choose any direction, and they need to keep forces in every single town for if the Russians start attack, they need to have time, possibility to reinforce the area and to stop the Russians. So this is like three projections. We discussed about the progress. We see that the Russians are taking towns by towns, and as we see, there is small operational pause. What does it mean, operational pause? I'm not saying that the Russians stop. No, you see that they're taking town by town, but it doesn't mean that they're regrouping and so on. No, the Russians, why they're like very slow right now, why we were expecting that Siversk are going to fall by the Thursday, but maybe it's still possible, who knows. The thing is that the Russians reached the second defense line. So this area from Siversk towards Bakhmut is totally fortified. The Ukrainians had a lot of time to enforce this area, to fortify this position, to bring everything as much as possible. And the Russians, like right now, in front of a big wall. And now they need to start everything from the very beginning. And they started somewhere in the past near Gorsko-Zolotoye, near Lysychansk, near Izum, near Svetlodarsk, near Liman. So they're like in front of a big wall, and now they need to crack this wall. And we understand that first step would be very slow, but from every day, from day to day, they will increase and increase and increase their. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel condemns any kind of violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, and enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye bye.